And I said, well, how hard can it be, boys?
Slightly unrelated, but like in the 90s, my uncle murdered my grandpa and he framed my mom for it. But he ended up getting caught and he got a life sentence. But my mom was still really mad at him and she didn't talk to him for like over a decade. And then one day they started talking again while he was still in prison. And they're like trying to figure out, how to fix their broken sibling bond. The bond that was broken because he killed their dad and framed her for it. And they decided to do like a book club, and my mom was really into Jodi Picoult, and so she would buy Jodi Picoult books for him and for her, and then they would read them at the same time and they would discuss them. For whatever reason, it got around the prison that my uncle was doing like a Jodi Picoult book club with my mom. So then random inmates would literally just like show up at my uncle's cell like, hey, Steven, I heard you got the new Jodi Picoult book. Can I get that when you're done with it? And then the Jodi Picoult books would like go around the entire prison. Mind you, my uncle was not a good man even when he was in prison. He wasn't like on his best behavior. So he was in a max security prison. Like, these are all dangerous offenders. And they're showing up at my uncle's cell like, hey man, I heard your sister sent you the Jodi Picoult book, and having like this big Jodi Picoult like book group throughout the prison. And this went on for years. And then in 2017, for whatever reason, they decided to let my uncle out of prison. And when he was getting out of prison, this one specific inmate came up to him and was like, man, I don't have anybody on the outside who can send me the new Jodi Picoult books. I don't know what I'm going to do once you leave. And my uncle was like, oh, no big deal. Like, my sister doesn't have anybody to do Jodi Picoult book club with since I'm leaving prison. So let me give you her contact information and you can just do Jodi Picoult book club with my sister. She'll send you the books. And so then he gave a serial killer with a Wikipedia page my mother's contact information. And to this day, my mother has Jodi Picoult book club with this man. Mom started writing my uncle in prison after he'd been locked up for about 15 years, and I remember she had been on the fence about it for a few years, trying to decide if she was ready to communicate with him, if she really wanted to forgive him. But ultimately, my mother is one of those people who truly believes that if you carry hate in your heart for somebody else, you only hurt yourself. You don't hurt them at all. She's huge on forgiveness. So she wrote him that first letter, basically saying exactly that. It was really a rant about forgiveness. And so he writes her back and is like, hey, sis, if you're willing to forgive me for murdering our father and framing you for it, then I would be willing to forgive you for that time when I was 12 and you stole my favorite Star Wars doll and pretended to fart on it and you broke its head off of it. And when my mom got that letter back and she read that, she was so upset by the fact that he was still upset by what she did to that doll in the 80s that she immediately got on the internet. She hunted down that Star Wars doll from the 1980s. She found one new in the box, paid an astronomical price for it, got it shipped to our house, took a picture of it, sent it to my uncle in prison, and was like, I got you the doll so that you can have it when you get out of prison. And it just blows my mind to think about the fact that my uncle truly sat in prison for 15 years stewing over the fact that his sister broke his favorite Star Wars doll with her ass. Thanksgiving, after my uncle got out of prison for murder, I wanted to do something special for him because he had just been in there for over 20 years eating nothing but prison food every Thanksgiving during that period of time. So I went and I dug up his mom's old recipe card box, my grandma's old recipe card box, and I dug through the recipes hoping to find something special to make for him. However, all the recipes kind of seemed like they would be worse than prison food, but I did end up deciding on 2 different recipes. One of them I was already familiar with, and that was her stuffing recipe. Now, I was already familiar with this recipe because my mom used to make it for us when we were kids until we begged her to stop making it because it was that terrible. However, I guess my grandma used to make it for them religiously when they were kids, and so I wanted to be able to provide that experience back to my uncle again. And then the next one was her peach cobbler recipe. Now, I would not actually call this a cobbler by any means, but she did, and good for her, and honestly it seemed edible, so I made that one as well. I put them on the table, and then I watched my uncle as he went for that first bite of stuffing, and he put it in his mouth, and then he made this face, and he took it back out of his mouth, and he was like, interesting. And I'm proudly like, yeah, I used grandma's recipe. And he's like, well, that makes sense. And then he's like, but it's missing something. And I was like, no, I followed the recipe to a T. It's not missing anything. It tastes like crap because it's a crappy recipe. And he's like, no, you're definitely missing something. And then he like gets my mom in on it and he's like, she's missing something. It tastes wrong, doesn't it? There's something missing. And I'm like, I can assure you guys, I followed the recipe to a T. And they're like, no, something's missing. And then they continue on about a different conversation for about 15 minutes before my uncle bangs his fist on the table and he's like, ashes. And I'm like, what? And I guess what was missing was the fact that I am not a chain smoker, but my grandmother was, and she did not stop smoking even while she prepared food for her children. So on top of the recipes being complete ass, they also contain a ton of cigarette ash. And so my mom and my uncle grew up eating a bunch of cigarette ash in their food. And I can't imagine that's incredibly healthy for children. And I kind of wonder if maybe that contributed to the fact that her son grew up and became so messed up that he killed his own father. uncle befriended a cannibal when he was in prison, and then when I was in college, I was writing a paper on cannibalism, and I really wanted to interview a real cannibal for this paper because I thought it would make my paper stand out. It would give it that extra pizzazz, right? But I was really struggling to find a cannibal who would allow me to interview them and put their name on my paper because I needed to cite my sources. Apparently, all the cannibals out there don't want people knowing that they're indulging in human meat, right? And so I happened to tell my uncle this one day when I'm doing a little prison phone call with him, and he's like, "Oh, I actually know a cannibal in here. I'll hook you up with him and you can interview him." And I was like, "Oh my gosh, that's so perfect." So one day I get a call from this guy named Kevin, and he lets me interview him. He gives me all the details of his life, literally all the information that I need and more to get a perfect score on my paper. And then a couple months later, my uncle ends up getting out of prison. And like a month after that, I get a new friend request on Facebook, and I look at it, and what do you know? It's Kevin the Cannibal. And I hit accept because honestly, I've made worse choices in life. Also, when I interviewed him, he told me he doesn't like the taste of tattoos, and I'm like 85% covered in tattoos. So I knew that I was going to be safe. And now he's on my feed pretty regularly, just posting the most out of pocket stuff. And today he posted a picture of him in a tux with a clown mask on, and the background was rainbows and unicorns, and he had the Reading Rainbow theme song playing.